Okay, we'll start this work session. Note that everybody's here. I understand that Arlington's not here to do their update?
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll call Melissa up here to give us updates on the school program, farmers market, and I guess also do the Greenway since you're up here all at one time.
Okay. What's first? Safe routes.
You have 3 minutes.
I have 3
No,
minutes.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, safe routes, it's all good, we're good.
Okay, good to know.
So just a little update, and I'll kind of go back through it a little bit, just as a reminder in terms of this, what this program is. We've been working on this program since before I came, for a couple of years now, with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. The COG received a grant in 2014 called a TIGER grant. Transportation Incentives Generating Economic Recovery is what that is, to address school transportation safety. And the staff that was there at the time decided to nominate Delaney Elementary and Arthur Intermediate in that area to look at how that area can be made to be more, how that area can be more safe for pedestrians, specifically the students and their parents, and walking or biking to and from school. So there were 2 meetings held in the spring of 2017 at Delaney to establish a project team, which included at the time police staff, planning staff, Delaney principal, Arthur representative, and staff from the Kennedale ISD. So there was an analysis that was done at that time, and this was all in place when I came here in terms of that plan that came from this analysis. To identify major routes to walk or bike to school, some barriers that were there, and opportunities for improvement. The pictures that you see here are just a couple of images showing the challenges that students have getting to and from school. I actually went over and took pictures one afternoon after school, and it was remarkable how many kids do walk to and from school, some with their parents, some not. Or bike, and it was amazingly dangerous. So the picture on the left is actually from my car, where they were trying to weave kind of around a parked car and through my, on the side of my car. So, and the picture on the right just kind of shows you there really aren't sidewalks that the kids can walk on, so they're all in the street. So what was proposed from that analysis were new sidewalks on Mistletoe, Paula, Timberline, Crestview, Reeves, and Clover Lane. That map should be in your packet so you can see it a little bit better. And also some new and enhanced curb ramps, primarily focusing on Clover Lane and Mistletoe, those streets that are in front of the schools. Additionally, curb extensions are planned for Clover Lane and Mistletoe, as well as street trees along Clover Lane and Crestview. Street trees are really important to give a sense of protection for the sidewalks, so the sidewalks will be inside the tree line. And then new stop signs at Clover Lane, Timberline, Clover Lane and Reeves, and then Hilltop and Reeves.
What do you mean by curb extensions?
Curb ramps.
Curb ramps?
Right, so like handicap ramps.
Okay.
Additionally, there was proposed in the plan a pedestrian refuge island along with a pedestrian beacon. This was in the plan when I came, and I think conceptually is a really good idea to have a median. I'm a big proponent of medians on Kennedale Parkway in general. However, we struggled a little bit with the location. Had a hard time finding a location that really made sense. There were a lot of different variations, one of which seemed like the most possible physically, which would require also eliminating one of the drives into the ISD parking lot. There was a lot of discussion with TxDOT about concern about whether it would be used. TxDOT went out and did an analysis and said, we don't see any pedestrians out there, therefore it's not needed. Which of course it's needed because there's no pedestrians because it's not safe. But in any case, we kind of had gone round and round on that particular issue, and that combined with the fact that we're looking at an overall complete street design for Kennedale Parkway, we decided that it would be best to remove it from the plan rather than sort of hold the rest of the plan hostage essentially for that median. And so that is the conversation we've had with COG, is to remove that median. In lieu of that, we're working with the COG to provide some planning dollars, assistance for us to do a complete street plan for Kennedale Parkway. This is just an image of what that could look like. This is not Kennedale Parkway, but a similar street that's actually TxDOT as well, and is of the same traffic capacity, believe it or not, as Kennedale Parkway. It doesn't have to look like it looks today. It doesn't have to feel that way. So rather than sort of a Band-Aid approach with one little median, we'd like to look at whether we can plan for and perhaps apply for funds, because they do come up periodically, for street enhancements to create a street that is not just good for vehicular traffic, but pedestrian and bicyclists as well. And the timeline, I know everybody wants to know, this is, keep in mind, these are federal dollars involving TxDOT, who's going to be letting the project. It is a long process, so we are moving forward. We've been given the okay on the plan itself, now that we've taken out the median, and we are continuing to work with COG on finalizing that plan and the official funding for the plan. The COG is committed to funding this, and the city did provide the 20% match last year for this project. So once, I think that'll finalize here in the next month or two, we'll be able to start on project design and the construction plan. That actually as well as the environmental clearance, which takes quite a while, particularly because these are federal dollars. It takes 18 months, and the construction takes 12 to 15 months. So we're looking at final completion in 2021. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Not directly related to this, Melissa, but has anyone considered reevaluating the one-way streets that are in place part of the day in that neighborhood? Because I know Chad's talked about it, it's very difficult for the people who live there to get home.
I mean, I'd be happy
I've
to
personally been yelled at.
work with Larry on that.
And I think we just maybe take a look at it, see if it's still effective. If it's not effective, what a better option might be. I think I see the chief nodding that it's a challenge in that neighborhood.
I'm sorry, I've heard a little bit about this. Is it just one way during certain times?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I mean, Larry and I can kind of talk about this a little more as it relates to this too, and make
maybe
sure
that could be something we do all of it kind of in the same time frame and roll out the
Sure.
project in its completeness, but.
That could be something perhaps we could fix earlier than 2021, but.
And I'm not saying they have to go away, I just am not sure that it's the best way. Right?
Larry, do you have anything to add to that?
Not specifically, but I understand the school made the request of city council previous to my tenure here that they, due to traffic volumes, they wanted one-way traffic so they could control how kids were picked up going to the automobiles crossing the roads. So that's something we'll have to address with the school district, I believe.
I think one of the problems, and I've had it myself, is they want to force people who aren't trying to go to school to sit there for 20 minutes when you're just trying to get home. I know Chad has mentioned he has to go way around the backside of the school to try to get home.
The thing that gets me on the safety side of it is all the traffic that's coming into the neighborhood that's trying to get home is forced to the elementary. So you're doubling up the volume of traffic right in front of the elementary where the majority of the kids are actually walking from. It's not Arthur. So you're putting more traffic in the most susceptible student population.
What I'd suggest is Larry and I can kind of sit down and look at some possibilities, and perhaps we can set up a meeting with the school district. And I think since you guys live in the neighborhood, it would be good if you could attend that.
Because I think if we're going to add sidewalks, that's going to encourage the kids to walk. We want to make the traffic as safe as we can for the kids so that they feel comfortable using the sidewalks.
Well, I have kids that go to both schools, and you say a lot of kids, or most kids walk from Delaney. Well, that's not true. When they're young kids, they get picked up. Delaney is not the issue, it's Arthur. Because at Delaney, that road's nice and wide, you can have two-way traffic, but at Arthur, it's a nightmare, man. Especially when you're picking up and they're trying to leave, and you have to turn right. If you had more cars coming from the opposite direction, it'd be like gridlock over there. So, I think it works well with Arthur, I think with Delaney, it doesn't. I think the traffic will go both ways.
And it may very well be too that, and we can definitely look at the one-way versus two-way, but, you know, the idea is to make it safe for more kids to walk. And a lot of them do walk with their parents. When I was over there, I was actually amazed. There were dozens and dozens of kids with their parents walking home in the middle of the street.
My son walks home. I park in the fire department, come walk, gets my truck there. Give him some responsibility, I guess.
All right. Farmers markets?
Okay. Sorry, I can see. So this is just a kind of a little overview of what our current regulations are on farmers markets. So farmers markets are community gathering events where people can access fresh local produce. They're really a mechanism for, the idea is for homegrown type of foods and products that can be made from those agricultural products. They have gained popularity in recent decades. There are quite a few around the Metroplex. We currently, the City of Kennedale allows 4 farmers markets in C2, Old Town 3, and agricultural zoning. The ag requires a special exception. And we have really we don't have a lot of verbiage in our UDC for farmers markets specifically, other than the definition for that use, which is, as you see here, a building or structure designed or used for the seasonal sale of farm or homegrown agricultural products. So that's one key element, is it has to be some kind of structure, has to be homegrown agricultural products or agricultural related products. So for example, pickles made from cucumbers, that kind of thing. Directly to the consumer from a designated area that includes 2 or more stands or stalls that are owned, leased, or rented for the display or vending of fruit, vegetables, and other garden or farm crops. So it's fairly limited. We don't get into things like meat and eggs and so forth. So our definition is fairly limited. In Chapter 10 of our municipal code, we formally adopt the county and state requirements for health regulations. And we assign all health review processes to the county. And we do that for not just farmers markets, but restaurants, any kind of food, anything you put in your mouth. We work with the county to make sure that they have reviewed and provide all applicable permits before we issue permits. And we can have additional permits than the county. The county will have their regulations, which they comply with the state regulations, and then we can have additional regulations, and do in some cases. The state defines a farmer's market as a designated location used primarily for the distribution and sale of food directly to consumers by farmers and other producers. So that definition is important as it relates to all the regulations concerning farmers markets. And then a stand is a premise owned and operated by a producer of agricultural food products. So that's a very important definition, at which the producer or other persons may offer for sale produce or foods. So they're not intended, this is a statement in the state regulations, food markets are not food service establishments. So they're not intended to be for prepared food, which doesn't say you can't have a food truck, for example. We have mobile food vendor permits that we provide, and those could be at like an event or a farmer's market. And there's Texas cottage food laws that get very intricate. Cottage foods basically means it's something you make at home. There's specific things that you can and can't provide. In a nutshell, it comes down to things that are that don't have to be refrigerated or heated. So those types of things can be provided at a farmer's market. Our definition is actually more narrow than that, but the state allows that. And then there's a whole variety of other regulations: food safety, temperature requirements, hand washing, wastewater management, restroom facilities, access to commissaries, and other state regulations that are regularly changed. So there were several new ones this year. And we do rely on the county to keep up with those regulations. And then the county health, environmental health department, any distribution or sale of goods meant for human consumption must be inspected by the county. So we do rely on the county to do those inspections, although our staff can do inspections. We really kind of lean on the county to do that because it does get into some very specific requirements depending on what kind of products are there and different requirements for different types of products. So our process, we haven't had, or I haven't seen this happen since I've been here, but if one wanted to do a farmer's market, you would apply at the city for a permit for a farmer's market. We would then provide the application information to the county. It's actually a similar process that we do for, say, restaurants or even a mobile food vendor. So the county would review, inspect, and provide applicable permits depending on what it is they're requesting. And then if all requirements are met by the county, then we would make sure that our requirements are met and the city would issue a permit. Be happy to answer any questions.
So Melissa, at the beginning, it said a structure, so someone setting up a tent and selling food does not fall within our current guidelines?
Well, I mean, it doesn't say it has to be a permanent structure. I assume it could be a temporary, like a tent type structure. I think the idea is that it needs to be covered, which most farmers markets have some cover.
And then what does the county define as what do they mean by access to a commissary? How does the county define that?
I don't know. I can get back with you.
I was just curious because, I mean, we're talking, you have to have restrooms and there's quite a bit of.
And all of these don't apply to everything. So, for example, if all you're providing is raw produce, you may not have to do you don't have to have hand washing, temperature requirements. So all of these requirements don't apply to everything. It depends on what you're doing and what you're providing.
Chris, I've seen requirements for food trucks, for instance, to have access to a commissary, which is a place where they can go and have equipment to wash down the truck and to dispose of waste, if it's particularly solid waste or but it has to be available and used on a regular basis to keep the health issues from creating problems. Now, how they use it in terms of the county health department, I'm not sure.
So are we saying that a lot of our laws are regulated by the state and the county? We have to meet their requirements?
Yes, we can, it varies. It depends on the language in the law. But as a general rule, we can be more strict, but not less strict than the state requirements.
But Melissa, in the staff report, I think you pointed out that the big issue, part of the big issue here is using or having available at farmers markets prepared foods where all of those inspections by the health department may not have been made and where we don't have the capability to just issue those and have them in various places in the city. So we'd allow for farmers markets, but they have to comply with those regulations.
So,
Have we spoke with random stuff about this? Because I see where we talk about, at council's direction, potential city-sponsored market.
Well, I don't know what you mean about this, but I've exchanged, it's been a number of months ago, but emails with the owner of Random Stuff providing all of the information in our UDC and the county, and I know they were in touch with the county on their regulations. So we basically told them what our requirements are and then gave them the contact information for the county. It wasn't clear to me what they were looking to do specifically, so we didn't have a lot of specific information to provide.
Yeah, I just believe that if we turn around and try to do a city-sponsored farmers market, that we would never hear the end of it. They would swear we're stealing their ideas and everything else. So,
Well, I think, Sandra, the suggestion there on that is if we wanted to have a farmer's market, it'd be easier and more productive for us to have one that the city manages in town center rather than having a regulation that allowed anybody to go do it and cook food out in the parking lot.
no, I understand, but
Okay.
is it possible if we'd worked with them that they might be more agreeable to coming into that? We come in and talk to them, we'd like to sponsor a city one, we want your input?
there you go, talk to them, Brian.
Okay, I'll talk to them.
Well, and just to be clear, the city having one would not exclude, we don't just allow one.
But they may see it as Sandra's saying that we're stealing their thunder.
From the information they provided, they didn't have sort of farmers involved, at least at that point.
Well,
It was, I mean, seemed like it, but we just didn't have a lot of information to go
we'll
on.
go talk to them.
We can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Greenways? I'll be fair, I didn't know we were calling it the Greenways Project. When I saw it pop up on the page, I go, what's the Greenways? And you'd already told me about it, I know.
That's okay. Gosh, I hope I have the right one.
And I think Chris is on that committee, aren't you, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for not telling anybody.
Yes, and Josh came to the stakeholder meeting last time.
Thanks, Josh.
Yesterday. So the Greenways project actually came from the Parks Master Plan. So when I first came here about a year and a half ago, I read through the Parks Plan, and it had some recommendations in there to look at the creation of a linear park system with greenway trails, including trailheads, trail signs, and trail bridges. So after kind of going through that, we had an opportunity that came up pretty soon after with National Park Service, who was requesting applications for grants, and it's a grant of basically their time and expertise to look at natural resources and how you can enhance those natural resources. And linear trails was one of those types of projects that you could work with National Park Service on. So we did apply for that assistance, and we got it. And so we have been working with National Park Service since about the beginning of this year, and trying to kind of hone in and create more detail on that idea. So this is a map that's a little bit hard to see, but this is a map that's in the Park Master Plan that was from 2016, 2016, that basically looked at how we can utilize our existing parks and also parks that we don't yet have that are park land, like Railroad Park, and connect those parks to a linear park system along the creek. So this is what you see here in yellow. That is that proposed linear park system. And the yellow lines on either side, this is 287 here down the middle, and the yellow lines on either side basically align with the creek. Down at the bottom, you can see here where the creeks end. So the idea is to connect those two creeks, Winding Creek and Kennedale Creek, with a grade level connection, sidewalks or walkways that connect that, so you'd have a full loop. And then on the map as well is the COGS Regional VeloWeb. So that's this red line that follows an Encore, I think it's Encore, right? Encore utility easement. So the idea with that is that you'll be able to bike throughout the Metroplex, even go from, say, Dallas to Fort Worth. When we started this project, we identified a stakeholder group. We tried to get a broad section of folks in neighborhoods and the Chamber and Rotary and Council and others that, as well as professional groups like, for example, the COG is working with us on this, to identify some specific project goals. So one of those identified was to develop a recreational connection throughout the city for bicycling, walking, and hiking. To connect existing parks and explore improvements for vacant parklands. And we specifically have two of those that we're looking at that are not yet developed. Bringing together the community for a common goal, which I think is something we've been trying to do, and develop plans, priorities, cost estimates. That's important. Everybody wants to know what's this going to cost. To do that, you also need to look at what are our priorities, where do we start, and then funding sources. Defining a backbone hub trail and viable routes. So we've started to dig into where actual routes could be. So it's nice to see the creek on a map, but we need to look at how we begin to really be able to physically make that connection. So in some cases, for example, we're looking at utility easements and how we might use that where perhaps the creek is not as accessible, or the creek land is privately owned, which creates a little bit of a challenge in some areas. And then identifying short-term projects. What's the low-hanging fruit? Some things we could get going sooner than later. Looking at midterm projects, design standards for all trail types and for amenities. These are outcomes, so these are things that we would like to come out in that final report. Identifying general costs, specific cost estimates for those short-term projects, the ones that are priority. Maintenance strategy, how do we maintain these trail systems? Safety standards, and of course, funding sources, how do we pay for it? How do we get to, what kinds of transportation do we want to work in destinations? So that was one of the exercises we had yesterday in the meeting, was looking at those destination points. Exercise was mentioned as important, although not as important yesterday for some reason. And air quality improvement was brought up, the idea of getting out of your cars more and walking, biking, access to nature. You know, I think Kennedale is really fortunate to have the creeks and that natural system that we could take advantage of. Connection to parks and neighborhoods that I mentioned. I think social interaction has been brought up quite a bit, the ability, again, to get out of your cars and meet people on foot, which enhances that small town atmosphere. Opportunities for outdoor education, cleaner waterways, which I think, you know, has been brought up before, and something kind of a little bit related to that, erosion, I think, is something we are looking at. We actually had somebody out from the state that gave us some recommendations on how we might deal with some erosion issues. Access to water, how do we get to the creek? That was a question I asked when I first got here. How do I get to the creek? Which in some areas is difficult. Art, cultural history, celebrating, there's some images here where that's been incorporated. And reducing crime, where you have areas that are cleaned up and people are using, there's less crime. So in one of the stakeholder meetings, we identified several priority areas, one of which is up by, off of Bowman Springs. It's the Arts and Cultural District Foundation land, and that's next to Glen of Village Creek Addition. And then another priority area that's kind of on the sort of the north end of North Road, and then the third being Sonora Park. So this is this is the first priority area that I mentioned, the Arts and Cultural Foundation land, which I think has a great opportunity to do something with this property, create a nice park, and begin looking at trails along there. Railroad Park, I don't know if you're all familiar with that land. This is already owned by the city and as a park land, but doesn't really have anything on it yet. But there were some schematics that were developed, I guess a couple of years ago, that looked at some designs for the park. And so we're in discussions about how we might perhaps start that process for that park, and of course creating that linear trail along it, particularly connecting to Sonora Park, which is not far from there. And the designs propose something very natural that really fit in with the natural landscape around it. And importantly, that trail connection goes along that park to connect to Sonora and to the north. So, and of course, Sonora Park, which really is the most developed of any area in terms of trails. And then, you know, I mentioned funding sources. There are funding sources that do come available. This is a bridge that was funded through Texas Park and Wildlife Grant. So these kinds of grants can be sought out, particularly if you have a good plan that you can point to for a specific project. And then there are neighborhood creek improvements, like these improvements in Falconwood or in Steeplechase. How do we begin to perhaps connect to those improvements that are already in place? I guess this was at the concert in the park, a month or so ago. We had a pop-up booth. We had a really, I think, good turnout for a survey that we were doing, 70, we call it a mini survey. It was only, I think, 4 questions. Interestingly, the 56% of the people that filled out a survey were non-residents, so that told us that people were wanting to come to Kennedale for events and things of interest. So a trail system, I think, likewise could draw people to Kennedale, perhaps, that don't live here. 14%, only 14% said they live here and do nothing else. 30% of residents spend time in Kennedale. So what that told us is about a third of people were, here and want things to do here. We have just launched a community survey that's online. If you go, you can go to the city's website. That's the easiest. It's linked there, but directly you can go to KennedaleGreenways.org. We've got a lot of information on that about the project and updates on the project, and there's a quick survey that I would encourage everybody to fill out. So yesterday we had I think a really good workshop where we identified preferred amenities, important sites and destinations to connect, and preferred walking and biking trail connections. These were some of the interactive maps that were developed from that. So our next steps are to do the community survey, which will be online for the next few months, to get input on the Greenways project. We plan a public meeting coming up in about mid-December. We're in the process of identifying a date for that. In January, we want to hold a design charrette with experts, so landscape architects, engineers, folks that can help us come up with specific visuals for those priority areas. And then in March, we want to have a public meeting to invite input on what comes out of all of that. And then late spring or early summer, complete the report. That's all I have.
So a couple things. So when we look at these linear trails and you're looking at some right-of-ways, there is between the Railroad Park and Sonora Park, there's a place called Discovery Ranch, and
Yes.
they're not interested in selling it, but there's a pipeline there that we have right-of-way along the pipeline. Have we thought of trying to connect those two parks along that pipeline?
We've talked about Discovery Ranch. I don't think we've dug into perhaps specifically how that's an important part, and I think that's at the bottom of the screen here, these lots right here. I believe that's where that is. And so we have discussed that. I don't think we've come up with an exact solution, but we need to dig down into that. We need to do a property ownership map to start looking at not only property ownership, but easements and so forth, and how we can really begin to draw a very specific line, then a conceptual line.
Because we looked at Discovery Ranch at one point when we were expanding Sonora, and they weren't interested in selling.
Right.
But we did notice that we had the easement through there that would connect us. And then I think secondly, are we still looking at the bridge down there on New Hope Road? When TxDOT was looking at designing it, they were going to put a tunnel underneath it for a bicycle path so people wouldn't have to cross the road. Is that still
That's maybe a Larry question.
in the plans as a way of connecting these?
That is not in the current scheme of plans.
Then why did they get
Due
rid
to the
of it?
fact of the extra right-of-way width they needed to make the ramps handicap accessible, it was not feasible at the time to pursue that.
Okay,
And we thought we'd wait until the Delaware was coming through and then
Right.
look at the options then.
okay. But then last but not least, when we've talked about the issues along the creek and the erosion problems, it seems to me that if you're going to go fix erosion problems, you should be buying right-of-way along the way if you're going to put a linear trail that would go along that creek. Is that what you're looking at?
Well, I mean, we'll start digging into that. I think to start off with, it'll be fairly conceptual on a lot of the plan, and we'll have more specific recommendations on some priority areas. We don't have the funding or resources to do an exact plan for the entire line along the creek.
Yeah, because I think the plan was $4.3 million for the creek, but instead of having the problem of using public money on private property, if you were to use that land to increase to protect the erosion and build a trail, then you'd get rid of that issue.
Sure, I mean, and those kinds of recommendations I would anticipate in the final report. I think one of the things that was interesting about the gentleman that came out from the state, he was like an expert in erosion, and he came up with recommendations, which I think we'll include in the report, which really had to do with the types of plantings and how you create a more natural creek lining with appropriate plants to prevent erosion, rather than some of the things that we've perhaps been doing or not been doing.
You mean like ripraps and stuff like that? And
No, I mean, he did not recommend those.
that's what I'm saying. These would be
Yes,
alternate, yeah.
I mean, his concern with those is I think that's what the rocks and the fencing, right? That they rust over time, that ultimately they'll break down. It's not a long-term solution. And that the long-term solution was really looking, I'm paraphrasing because got really technical, but basically looking at the natural form of the creek and sort of accepting that natural form rather than trying to change it and having appropriate plants that would prevent the erosion. I think that was the gist of kind of what you talked about.
Well, could we do like a council trip to Vegas and bet all the city's money and see if we can come up with the money?
No.
Okay. Waiting for the
There are funding sources that
Yeah.
become available. I think it's very important to just know that you have to have a plan of some level if you want to get funding for things.
But you're going to need matching grant money anyway, right?
Potentially, it depends on the funding source and every grant's a little bit different, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's those Lou grants, Amy grants, Bud grants, and those are all different. Yeah, and we also have land in escrow for grants.
Okay.
Any other questions other than my terrible jokes? All right, thank you. Now we'll bring up Lakita to talk about EDC bank accounts.
Good evening. I'm coming to you this evening to talk about the EDC and the separate bank account that the council had directed the staff to open back in, I believe it was May of 2018. We are coming this evening because we are looking at the city's consolidated cash account. I had questions about why the EDC account was open, and so upon doing some research and kind of looking at some of the FOIC guidelines and just from my expertise and things that I've seen in the past, I had questions about why this account existed. Normally, with cities, local governments, the GFOAT recommends a pool cash method, whereas checks are written out of one consolidated cash bank account. And whatever is done to that consolidated bank account, the opposite is done to the correlating fund. So for example, the city has several funds. We have a drainage fund, we have a water sewer fund, we have a bond fund. And all of those, while the funds are maintained separately, all of those funds participate in pool cash. And so the EDC should participate in pool cash as well. I went back and looked at a few of the city's audits. Right now we have our auditor, DKD, and I looked at also the city's previous audits from Tiller, Brown and Hill, and neither of them had concern about the city having a fund for the EDC, and did not recommend opening a separate bank account. And move that money, which right now, I think there's about $28,000 in that account. Not a lot of money at all. Move that money back to the consolidated cash account and credit it back to the EDC. And I'm here to answer any questions that you have about that.
Sandra, you had some concerns about this. Is this, and do you feel comfortable with it?
I trust her, what she says what's best.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure that we're all comfortable.
One of the problems was at the time, and I'm just gonna say it, we didn't trust everything that Brady was telling us of what he was doing. And I think that was a big part of what was set for the camp.
Okay.
You're doing a great job. When you tell us something, I believe what you're saying, and so I don't have an issue with it.
And Mayor, we also ran this issue back through our city attorney's office. And we looked at the recommendation that they gave us back in 2018. Their recommendation was simply saying that the EDC funds should be kept separately. And they are. They're kept separately through fund accounting. So we were already accomplishing that. So there would be no need to maintain a separate bank account when we already have a separate fund. The EDC even has its own separate audit. It's not audited with the city. It has its own budget, and it has its own fund balance, which we report to you guys on a monthly basis as well. So I also went ahead and asked our auditor. I gave a call to Josh, our senior auditor at BKD, and he agreed.
All right. So, George, do you need any action on our?
No, I think we just need direction from you that you're okay, and the minutes would reflect that you've authorized it. Since you told us to create a separate checking account, if you're okay with it, minutes would reflect that you authorize us to close that account.
Is everybody okay with it? Josh? What's that?
So if y'all are,
Chris?
I don't know, I would think that if it's gonna, if we done it separately, I would think that it needs to be a separate account, but if you're saying it's set up that way.
It's set up separately anyway, right?
Yeah, it's already set up that way through the city. You know, just like we have a water sewer fund. Well, we don't have a separate water sewer account. You know, we have a,
I think, Josh, if you look at it, we've got it accounted for in separate funds that are audited separately. The only thing we're talking about here, and using the words account and fund may be confusing, we're talking about a separate checking account here that doesn't need to exist,
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
write checks on.
So the pool cash concept, there doesn't need to be a separate account, bank account for each fund.
So why was it just the 28,000 in that account?
Well, I looked back and I tried to figure that out. The best thing that I could come up with was that I saw where I looked at some emails, and I believe Brady tried to make a case for this at some point. It appears that the EDC has 3 funds. One of the funds, in opening this separate bank account, that fund was closed. So it looks like the $28,000, that was a balance in that EDC fund. He used that to open the bank account. There's no rhyme or reason why. He probably just didn't know what else to do with the direction that he received. That's the best that I can come up with. I don't know how he came up with the idea. I tried to search emails and everything. I just know that I saw the minutes and the direction that he was given, and he was given direction to go and open an account. Well, he needed money to open it with, so I guess he just took it out of one of those EDC funds.
All the EDC funds.
Not all the EDC funds, no, just one of, there's 3 separate EDC funds. Well, now there's 2. There used to be 3. He closed one and made this new account, made that new bank account with that.
It was like a little appeasement to what we was asking.
Yes, yes. There's over a $300,000 fund balance in the whole EDC, and he only put $28,000 in that one account to open it. It's costing the city money every month to keep it, and we're not using it.
Chad, you okay with it? Linda?
I'm okay with it, but I think that's very sad that he did not follow council direction fully. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think everybody's okay with it? All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move into executive session pursuant to section 551.071, 551.074. There's probably a 007 in here somewhere, I don't know. Yeah, but I think that's it. No, that's all I got. Okay, let's get this meeting started. Make note that everybody's here. Any action taken out of executive session? S&S? Yeah, it was an S&M.
I make a motion to allow the city manager to speak with S&S. Is that?
Yeah, what we'd talked about is that you would consider a motion to authorize me to enter into the contracts necessary to complete the Fathom negotiations as we discussed in closed session, including contracts with S&S and Vertex One.
What he said.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Or vote, I guess, never mind, we got the voting thing out. All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, so invocation, who wants to do invocation? I see Greg, yeah, thanks for pointing him out, Jeff, pointing over there. Pastor Adams, would you like to come up and do the invocation? And I believe you're doing, every Thursday, you're doing something with the police department? Yes. You're with the chaplains? All right, if you'll join me for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas pledge? Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Stay standing for the Oklahoma pledge. I'm kidding. Yes, I noticed. Citizens Visitors Forum, I was wondering, did I have anybody signing up? Oh, there's John. Well, we'll start with the best. Richard Weber. I promise not to argue with you tonight.
Richard Weber, 2703 Crestmore Court, Arlington. I want to talk about October 3rd, 2018, just over a year ago. Now, if people look at their agenda, tonight's agenda near the bottom has a signature. It's Leslie Galloway. Mrs. Galloway does an excellent job. And what she's signing for is a certification that this notice was posted outside the doors there to the east. Well, on October 3rd, 2018, there was a special P&Z meeting. And according to the agenda, it was posted out on the doors out there. However, if you actually look at the emails from the planning director on Monday, October 3rd, it becomes painfully obvious that it wasn't. 72 hours before a Wednesday 7 o'clock meeting would be Sunday at 7 o'clock,
Richard, can I stop you for a second? You're saying 2018 or 2019?
2018.
Okay, for a year ago.
Yes, a
Okay.
little over a year ago. So if you look at the emails of the planning director, it becomes painfully obvious that it wasn't posted in time. Now, she's also signed a government document stating that it was done. So it seemed like there's another violation there also. Now, these are serious charges, and I would like to see the city investigate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Next, my second favorite, John Havali. How you doing, John?
Fine, sir. How are you?
I'm all right.
Before you start the clock.
Okay.
You had 1 minute and 15 seconds. Would you like to give it to me?
Wait, go ahead and give it to me.
I saw the timing.
Tell me when we're going to start.
All right. Mine's firstly is general comments, and then I also am speaking for B, pursuant to discussion to consider the city manager's annual performance eval, and then items for individual consideration. So I think you have all that in my notes. And the last item was G. General consent statements. What I was talking about was when you all, P&Z or the board or the city manager or the council members look at items where we are expanding, bringing more houses into the area, more business, etc., to consider especially the residents in the given area that is being affected. For example, for us, 11.3 acres for me and all that to Mrs. Coker's property. That was quite good that you had brought the builders in and they presented their case before it came before the P&Z and the city. So we were able to give some input. But when the scenario travels through these processes, I hope that one doesn't have to railroad or bulldoze the residents that live in these areas that are being affected, to please consider their opinions, their input, which may affect the possible outcome of that decision to have these buildings built, or houses, or business, or whatever. So I'm just recommending on behalf of myself and everybody else, and for those that don't want to be spoken about, that consider that we are also part of the city that want more taxes, we want growth. I want growth, I want taxes. But put that in that equation formula. So that group is not, so the people are not left, it's like us versus you. I think that is a worst case scenario to run our city well. And this is, so please consider that. It's not us versus you, it's us together. So that's what I was calling for, that unity. And that includes everybody. Thank you. I still have 33 seconds. It's good to meet you, Mr. Mayor.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. No cookies or anything for today?
No, nothing. Next up, the Stockyard Kid. Is he here? Dead man walking a green mile. Dead man walking a green mile.
So I know some of you, I've talked to a few people. I'm on the Parks Board. Sorry, Phil Wallace, 304 Arthur Drive, Kennedale. I just want to urge the city council to start paying attention to what's going on with our baseball, our youth baseball, our fields, some of the changes that are coming through the Parks Board and some decisions that we've been faced with. And for a year, every month, we've been tasked with what to do next with our baseball fields. Do we spend all the money for a youth association that's ultimately dead here? I mean, they moved to Arlington. Do we put all this money into the fields and really nobody to play on them other than just to look good? Or we've been given a few new opportunities where somebody could come in and ultimately invest in our fields and invest in our city and kind of take that whole load off of us as far as not having a youth association, having to put an employee in the parks to man all of our new upgrades that we've discussed spending money on. But without getting into all of that, I would just please urge you guys to pay attention to what's going on with youth baseball in Kennedale right now. I think some big changes are fixing to start appearing in front of us and some big decisions we can make that I think will benefit our city greatly other than the KYA. I hate saying it. I'm 30 years old and I've been KYA all my life. I know Linda, I played with Claude, but I think KYA is bit the dust, and it's time for us to start really considering a new wave of baseball opportunities that are coming into Kennedale. So if you guys will please pay close attention to that. All right, thank you.
And for those who don't know, Phil's getting married on Saturday. Yeah. To a saint of a woman, I might add. I get my revenge finally. All right, next up, reports from City Council. Josh?
As Mr. Wallace said, I attended a Parks Board meeting. It was pretty interesting. There are some exciting things possibly to come. Also, yesterday I attended the Greenway stakeholders. That was pretty neat. Everybody brainstormed on new ideas and park system. I also attended with James Arthur. I was a chaperone for camp. That was quite interesting. And then I'd also like to publicly thank Chief Brown for our first annual Blazing the Trail for Literacy program. A lot of kids read a lot of books. And we also got to work alongside with Arlington and their fire department and all that good stuff. And then last, the Lady Wildcats, who are going to state. I would like to, maybe we can discuss having a parade or something like that for them, whenever they come back. So that's it.
All right, Chris?
Last Thursday, my wife Elena and I assisted and helped sponsor the community meal that Phil Wallace has gotten with Lori Middleton to revive. So they started 2 weeks ago. I think the first week they had about 10 people. Last week we had about 25 people. So it was good, a chance to get to meet some citizens I hadn't met before and just sit down and have a nice meal and talk and just visit with people from the community. That was good. And then I was able to, for a short time, attend the community health fair that we had Saturday in the park. I had to go to work and wasn't able to stay, but I went by to thank the people that came out and gave their time to offer some free health services to our community.
Sandra?
Okay, I just want to recognize Commissioner Devin Allen, who's here tonight, and her precinct administrator, Jay Jackson. Devin does a lot for Kennedale. Anytime we call and want to meet with her, she meets with us, and she's trying to make sure that we get things done that's been neglected for a long time. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. She also had a toiletry drive that I attended. She was raising toiletries for TCC Southeast Campus. Those students out there, they are really in need of a lot, and so if y'all can support that, that would be great. I also attended Moms Demand Action. We've had a lot of shootings and a lot of people killed lately, and we just need to make sure that we get the right people in office. And with that being said, I have decided to run for constable of Precinct 7 because we need to make sure that we have some minorities in these law enforcement positions to make sure that we have less shootings and less killings in our minority community. I also attended the health fair on Saturday. So my sugar was low, but my blood pressure was high, so thank you, City of Kennedale, for that. We just need to pay attention to what's going on. A lot of stuff that it doesn't affect us, but we need to care about the people that it's affecting. And it's, especially with my job, we just need to make sure that we are out there looking out for the citizens, and that's all citizens, not just our neighbors, but even the people that we don't know, because a lot of people are out there suffering, and we need to do our part. And so, thank you.
Linda?
I attended the Senior Citizen Outreach celebration. They celebrated their first year anniversary, and Councilwoman Sandra Lee was also in attendance to that. It was very nice. Also, I was not able to attend the health fair that we had last Saturday because I was attending our annual ladies' tea at church. It's the Women's Mission Union group. And this year, our focus was on food donations for the Methodist Food Pantry. So it wasn't a whole lot, but for our small little group, I thought it was a success. Thank you.
Chad?
Like Chris, I also attended the Thursday night dinner that's been going on last week. It was really great to sit down and just chat with people about nothing in particular. It was a breath of fresh air for sure. I hope to see more people come to those. They are Thursday nights, 6:30. Someone said they're making chicken and dumplings this week. So, yes. That's all I got.
All right, well, I attended the health fair, and I have no longer the chair of the TRTC, which is great. That means I can skip meetings when I need to. And we're coming up on December 2nd, the Mayor's Council dinner. That's invited for all the mayors of Tarrant County and council members. I think some people have signed up. I'll be emceeing the event, so I'll be ready with a lot of one-liners. Ready to go. Oh, I've got some targets. Look out, Jeff Williams. Updates from the city manager.
Mayor, I think the only thing I'd like to mention is that we sent out a media release on Friday regarding our situation with our customer service billing company, Fathom, we're that contract and that service between us and the Fathom will be ending because the company is going out of business. But we're working very diligently to make sure there's a seamless and as smooth a transition for the city and for all of our customers as we can. And if you'd we'll try to keep everybody updated through our newsletter and webpage as we progress with discussions about that billing situation. And I also wanted to mention that I think, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, our Christmas tree lighting is scheduled for December 3rd, so that may be.
Yep, Pearl Harbor Day.
Before we meet again, so.
Look, I'm a historian. I didn't say it was a good one. You want to mention the financial reports and what we're doing here? Item 4, on why we changed it.
On the what?
Item 4. On the report.
The format of the agenda has changed somewhat, just trying to streamline it and make the council's agenda move a little bit more smoothly. So on the item number 4 is the financial reports. That's there if those have been provided to you. Normally that was appearing under an item called monitoring items. But if you have any questions about it, Lakita is here to answer those questions. And assuming this agenda works properly, that's where this will appear on the agenda in the future. So a little bit different format on our agenda, but the topic is here for council's discussion if you have any questions.
So if you have any questions, Lakita, we've got her here and she'll be here to discuss any financials every meeting. So you may have any questions for her tonight? All right, you escaped. Consent agenda. These items have buried on previous agendas, require little nor deliberation, consider routine. Does anybody want to separate anything from the consent agenda? Really? All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the revision of the October 22nd minutes as provided.
All right, do I have a second? All those in favor, Please enter your vote. Five zero. Sorry, Norm, we don't get to hear from you today. Did you want to speak? Norm? Did you want to speak?
Yes. I just want to thank you.
Oh, okay, you can come up.
That's about it. Norm Goodwatch with Waste Connections, and just want to thank you for your business. That's it, man, your vote, and we appreciate it, and I'm sorry you're going to have to put up with me for another 5 years.
Good luck with TCU, by the way.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you.
All right, items for individual consideration. Number one, discuss adoption of Resolution 562, casting votes for the 2020 Tarrant Appraisal District. Oh, on this vote, so let me just call up our one speaker, Daniel J. Bennett. Haven't I met you before? I have met you before. I know, I've met you before, several times. Yeah.
I was a candidate in 2017.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm on the ballot now, and I should not be.
What?
I'm on the ballot, I should be on the ballot. This is a resume for Gary Lozada. I'll explain why I'm on the ballot and should not be on the ballot. The city of Haslett, Mayor Golden and council passed a resolution nominating me as their candidate. Well, when I was going around talking about the resolution to change the way we cast ballots for the appraisal district, my familiarity with that council, I think, overlapped, and I forgot to tell them, I'm not here, I'm not running, I'm not here to ask you for your vote. I'm here to talk about the resolution. Anyway, it went in my junk mail. I saw it on the 27th. The recension letter by Diane Buchanan went out on the 28th. To date, Jeff Law has not put out my letter telling any entity that I am not on the ballot. Matter of fact, the Castleberry ISD casted 10 votes in my favor. And I gave my humblest apologies to Dr. Ramos. I would like to talk about a little history lesson here before you all vote. I am supporting Gary Lozada, and I'll reserve the last minute of my time speaking about him. I want to go back to September 16, 2011. When Mike Gillespie, John Molyneux, Tommy Brown, John Fagan, Joe Pothoff, and Ron Wright was the assessor. Two of the current candidates on your ballot is Gillespie and Fagan. They were on this board for 4 years. I'm going to step back to I got all the minutes for all the times that they were on this board. I want to go back to the chief of appraisers. Those who haven't attended these boards, I suggest that you do. I do. I've been at every meeting. On that particular day, Mr. Law then reported that Manatron project was moving along. Manatron has been at the district working on gap analysis for real and personal property appraisals. The district has made the first payment for the software. This next acquisition will be for hardware and storage devices. We all understand that software was a train wreck. It cost the county in 2015 $200 million actual dollars collected. It was under the watch of Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Fagan. I just thought I'd bring that to your attention. I have more, but I won't. I like to talk about Mr. Lozada. I met Mr. Lozada after I lost. I lost by 40 votes. I had 21 taxing entities vote for me, including this body, and I want to thank you. I know Norm wanted to thank you. I want to thank you. I'm still humbled by it. Mr. Lozada is a former ARB member. From 09 to 15, he lived through the software changeover. He specifically understands the failures that we're living through today. They haven't corrected themselves. He has a master's in education. He actually testified before the Senate panel for Bentoncourt's real property tax committee on April 27, 2016. He had a 5-minute testimony, and they spent 20 minutes asking that man questions. It was an amazing thing to watch on film. He's been an assistant to a city manager and an assistant to a superintendent. He both understands the nuances of municipal government and ISDs. He's uniquely qualified because he's an expert in real personal property, business personal property, commercial and residential. And I ask that you please consider him. I would not suggest someone to this board that would harm your citizens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have 6 votes out of 5,000 votes?
I think that's correct.
That's what it looks like here, total of all votes, and we've got 6, or .122. Do all 6 have to go to a candidate, or?
You can spread them out.
All right, anybody have any ideas on who they'd like to issue our votes for, all 6 of them? Okay. Any other suggestions? You want to make a motion? Yeah, yeah, question.
I make a motion that we nominate Mike Layman.
Have a second?
You're not nominating, but
You're casting your
I
vote.
think you need to determine how many of the 6 votes, all or part of them, that you'd want to cast for Mr. Lehman or for somebody else. You have 6 votes and you cast them all for one person, you're not nominating, you're voting for them.
Well, we have 6, if you want to
Up
say
to
6.
6.
Okay.
You can go 6, I mean,
I make the motion that we cast our 6 votes for Mike Layman.
have a second? Somebody? Anybody?
I don't know any of them, so I mean, can you tell us why, or?
Mike Layman used to be my boss.
Oh, okay.
Is he on Arlington City, Mansfield City Council? Yeah.
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, please enter your vote. We'll see how that turns out. How many votes does Arlington have? 600?
More than we do.
Jesus. Motion passes 5-0. All right, next item up. Consider ordinance 684, amending the composition, charge, and meeting requirements of the Utility and Infrastructure Board. George?
Mr. Mayor, this is the item that we've talked about in work session in the past, and the ordinance that's before you reflects the changes in the charge and the makeup and the composition of that board pursuant to the direction that the council gave us, with 2 of the members, if you adopt this, would be appointed who are currently, and while they're sitting on the UIB, would be members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. 2 would be members of the Economic Development Corporation Board. 2 would be members of the Parks and Recreation Board, and 1 would be a qualified citizen to serve who is not on any of the advisory boards of the city. And the meetings would be called at the request of the council to consider items that council assigns to that UIB. So that's the ordinance that's in front of you for consideration.
Well, I'm interested in if anybody has any nominees for that board.
That's another item, is to the appointment of members. This is
Okay.
adopting the
Or
ordinance.
anybody want to make a motion to adopt the ordinance 684?
I move that we adopt ordinance 684.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Please enter your votes. Five oh. All right, item 3, consider making appointments to Utility Infrastructure Board. Does anybody have any suggestions?
Mayor, do we want to do it by board, or do we want to do the slate of?
Well, give me if you got a slate, give me a slate. I want to hear some names. And then we'll discuss them.
I was looking at from P and Z, Austin Degenhart and Martha DeBella. From the EDC, Mark Erie and Andrew Schaefer. And from Parks and Rec, David Deaver and Jeff Navarez. And from the former UIB, Jeff Gregory.
Anybody have any other suggestions to that slate?
I would pick
All right. Anybody have a problem with Johnny Trevino? Anybody?
I had Andrew and Daryl Tippy for EDC.
What does Gerald Tippy do?
He's on one of the other boards.
Well, he's on the EDC, but you talking about what does he do as a profession?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer.
What about Trevino? You know who he does?
Mayor, he's a member of my church. He was an engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh, well, yeah. That's engineer. Yeah,
Which one, Trevino?
Trevino.
No, Trevino, or you're talking about Tippy, Mr.
Oh,
Tippy?
Tippy's an engineer. What about Tippy? Are you? He's been good on. Does he what? Does he have his own business?
John Trevino, I think he does. I know that he travels a good bit. He was detained and couldn't attend the EDC meeting last night, but I'm not sure what his travel schedule really is.
What's your suggestion? Okay,
That's who I had for EDC.
All right.
And then on the parks, I had Ken Michaels as one of them, because he has a background knowledge of the water sewer infrastructure here.
so you want to go with Jeff and Kenneth? Kenneth, we're putting you back to work again. Okay. All right, so that means that an updated one of Austin Deegan, Martha DeBello, Daryl Tippy, Andrew Schaefer, Jeff Navarez, and Kenneth, and Jeff Gregory. Is everybody okay with that? Anybody want to make a motion to approve that slate?
I will make the motion that we appoint Martha DeBella, Austin Deeganhart, Andrew Schaefer, Daryl Tippy, Jeff Gregory, Jeff Navarez, and Kenneth Michaels to the new UIB based on their present board seats.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please enter your vote as we put Jeff Moore to work.
We did the two alternates separate.
Yeah, we'll pick the alternate separate. All right, so now we got those. I just need a couple of alternates. You want to put Johnny Trevino as an alternate, Sandra? Yeah,
Joe Trevino, and how about David Green?
okay. David Green and Jeff Trevino, Johnny Trevino? Do I have a motion for that?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint David Green and Joe Trevino, Johnny Trevino, sorry, for places 8 and 9
Do I have a
on the
second?
UIB.
All right, any further discussion? If not, please enter your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Item 4, consider the city manager into an agreement with Shield Engineering at a cost of $103,000 for the engineering design of water, wastewater, drainage, and pavement improvements of Peggy Lane. Thank you, Larry, for getting this done.
I promise to be short and sweet if you don't mind.
Well, just be short.
Very good. Okay, the agreement you have here will address the water, sewer, stormwater, and paving improvements for the entire length of Peggy Lane. The pavement will be a 6-inch concrete paving with curb and gutter and subgrade stabilization. The water line is an 8-inch asbestos line, which will be abandoned in place and replaced with an 8-inch PVC line. The sewer line will be videoed and analyzed for its condition and be assessed, and the improvements will be determined by that video. The stormwater will be analyzed and designed to ISWIM and current standards, and we're going to have a slide presentation to explain some of those. The agreement has a cost of $103,700 for the engineering design and to facilitate construction, and will be funded out of the 2019 tax issuance. Let's go to this. Oh, too many buttons. Here you see in this slide is the tree at the intersection of Sublet and Peggy. This tree was analyzed by an arborist, and his recommendation was to remove that. We did not remove this tree due to residents' desire to maintain the tree in that location. With the water line and the sewer line and storm drain lines going through that area, most likely the root system will be damaged, and the pavement repairs to that will most likely take that tree out, and just natural construction will take that tree out. So I want to make sure you're aware that that's one of the issues we're going to look at in design. How do we protect that existing tree, or do we not try to protect it and go with a complete streets design and have a clean street?
If you remember, there used to be a big tree there until the tornado came through.
Yes, we took days cutting that up.
Yeah.
This is the second tree in the middle of the street. The arborist report on that was it was in good shape. We did some minor trimming on that here a year and a half ago. The ideal is if we build a road around that and take enough room, we're going to kill 3 or 4 more trees. So looking at the design of this and with the water and sewer lines going near this tree and the other 3 trees there, most likely those trees are going to have to be removed anyway with construction. So we know residents have an affinity for these trees, so we expect some back push from the residents. But if we're going to get a good road in with all the amenities that we want, it's most likely those trees will have to come out. But the engineers are going to look at that and see if there's a way that we can build this road and make that happen. Most likely, in my opinion, it will not happen. This tree is going to have to be removed.
You're an herbicidal maniac.
Well, yes, thank you. Go back. This is a picture of the end of Peggy Lane. And it shows also a part of Steeplechase. Currently, this end of Peggy Lane drains across the houses over to Steeplechase. I don't know if I can do the mouse and show you. Right in here in Steeplechase, there's about 7 French drains that drains the backyards of this property here. And there's 3 large French drains here that drains this property. So we're going to have to analyze that and possibly get easements between these properties to have the water drain naturally as it's going now. We all know people love their property. We expect this could be very costly. Here is the larger drainage area. The red box here is that picture we just talked about. If you look right in here where the mouse is, well, let me find it. I lost it again. Here it is. Right through here, water collects here and drains to these houses over to the Magnolia Hills. From about this 6-inch to about here, all drains through that property. And this has been the majority of the complaints I've had about drainage on this road in 15 years, has been through these 2 properties. The rest of the street drains up to Sublet. There's only 5 houses here that have some curb and gutter on it, and it was installed way back in the 80s, my understanding is. So everything from this point here north drains to Sublet. So we're analyzing all these drainage sheds and getting the water in easements and in pipes could be very costly, and that's going to be a large portion of the cost of this contract, is making sure the water is going where it needs to go safely and properly, and having the amenities there to pick that up and do so. And that's the end of that show. I said short. So if you have any questions?
Any questions?
Doesn't Colette Sublet kind of have the same issues? Why was Peggy versus that street?
I've had complaints on Peggy Lane drainage for the 12 years I've been in the streets, Public Works area. Many complaints, and that's just one of the projects that come up to the top.
I'm sorry, Josh, was your question about Collet Sublet Road?
No, I was just saying, because I know there's some complaints over there as well. I just wondered why this got priority.
Well, we're designing both of those, are we not?
Yes, we are designing both of those.
This is a design contract, and we also have a design contract for Collet Sublet.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Is the small tree too big to move, Larry, if it has to be taken out, could it, or is that too expensive of an undertaking?
Actually, the small tree was recommended to be removed by the arborist because it's a,
Could it be
Or
moved
state.
somewhere else, or where you're saying remove and discard? I'm just asking.
we could possibly move it somewhere else, but I think the conditions that it's having, it will not survive.
Okay.
It has, in the arborist report, it has root rot and 3 or 4 other issues that he noted.
I just thought it might ease the burden on people if we transplanted it rather than,
With a complete streets design and building an area of pavement with wider sidewalk areas, you could plant trees alongside between the curb and the sidewalk to help offset these trees.
I think it's more of what the tree represents, because that tree was taken down by the tornado. And so, as a community came together and put that tree back, I think that's not a big deal. Not what he suggested to it.
Any other questions? Thanks, Sandra, for bringing that back up, because I'd forgotten about Peggy Lane. We'd sat in that meeting, and you go, what about Peggy Lane? So we got that taken care of. So I entertain a motion, so I put my glasses on, to consider the city manager agreement with Shield Engineering to design water, wastewater, drainage, and paving improvements for Peggy Lane for a cost of $103,700.
I move that we authorize the city manager to enter into agreement with Shield Engineering Group at a cost of $103,700 for the engineering, design, wastewater, drainage, and paving improvements for Peggy Lane.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Please enter your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, consider the city manager enter into an agreement with Freeze and Nichols to conduct a roadway, water, wastewater impact fee study at a cost of $100,000.
Yes, Mayor, this was in your work session in the last October city council meeting. The information in the report is the same. However, the cost to do the study will be $100,000, and that cost will be covered from the roadway impact fee fund. Do you have any questions?
And this is required every 5 years?
Every 5 years, according to the government code.
Then we're up for our 5th year.
Yes.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to enter into agreement with Freeze and Nichols.
I make the motion that we enter into an agreement with Freeze and Nichols to complete the water, wastewater, and roadway impact fee study as required.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I have one question. Under the scope, the Citizen Advisory Committee, it doesn't say in there specifically, but who assigns those?
Typically, I would expect the Utility Infrastructure Board
Okay.
to play that role.
Thank you.
All right, please enter your vote. Motion passes 5-0. All right, we're going to go back into executive session pursuant to section 551.074 and 551.087. I'll give you 5 minutes, and then we'll meet back in there. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The motion adjourned is approved.